if you had the opportunity to kind of give some advice to business owners, let's just assume there's a whole bunch of people listening to this. They're all stuck in their heads and they're all kind of not paying attention to this. Where do you think people should start? Where do you think business owners should start on this conversation internally? Like, how would you're obviously passionate about it. So how would you start to crack open that egg in a way that people can consume it and start to bring attention to it and start to better their lives?
I think awareness is a great start. Acknowledge, and for this conversation 10 years ago would have been probably more awkward, because the idea of talking about depression or anxiety or any of these mental illnesses was sort of kept under covers. Now it just rolls off the tongue, which is awesome. Whether it rolls off the tongue for a business owner to acknowledge that they themselves may be in a dark space or may need some support, or maybe over, burning the candle at both ends or whatever it may be, that's a different thing. But I think the very first step is awareness, to acknowledge, hey, I'm not being the best self. I'm not being a nice person to be around. Have a listen and feel for the people around you. How are they reacting to you? How are they responding to you? And like I said, I'm not the guy who's going to get up on the soapbox and say, do this and do that. Personally, for me, meditation's been a savior. I suffer from anxiety and I have for years, and meditation's been just a blessing in that regard because it gets you out of your head. It stills everything. You don't have to sit cross-legged, put some sandals on and light some incense. You just need to find some time to slow everything down. Take a few breaths. God bless, what's his name? The breath guy. He's just moved into a couple of streets away. What's his name? Wim Hof. Wim Hof. I mean, God bless him for bringing this notion of breathing to our attention. I mean, it's very clever. It's his son that's the marketing brains behind it. But, we've been breathing for a long time as a human race, but he's packaged it up in a way that becomes very attainable and very important. And it's been quite a joy to be part of that kind of movement, if you like. So just simple things like that, pretty important.
Yeah, nice. I'm going to throw an idea on the table as well that I think a large part of it comes from having misaligned goals and misaligned actions versus values. Because a lot of people think that they're going to be happier if they're more successful, but then they say success, they borrow the vision of success based on what they can see on the media or whatever. And so they say, okay, success equals a certain amount of money or a certain type of lifestyle or all of these kind of things. And so they're in the pursuit of this thing without ever first actually working out whether or not that is the thing that they want. And so what can end up happening is that people are taking actions that aren't aligned with their values to achieve goals that aren't aligned with their vision of their life, which creates a huge amount of, dissonance. Because if you ask a lot of people what they really want, if you really cook it down, it's probably going to be things like, great relationship, great health, doing work that matters. Yeah, exactly. Right. It cooks it down. And I mean, I'll talk about it personally because, when we started our business, we started it with $5,000, no safety net, no backup, never worked in the industry before, had no network, had no nothing. We'd never really done sales and marketing before. We used to have to walk around the supermarket eating food off the shelves just because we had no money. We were trying to work it out how to start the business kind of thing. And so there was a pursuit of we were trying to get out. The business was designed fundamentally, primarily around impact and helping others. But there was a drive to grow it because we were trying to move out of a state of lack. But then what's happened is the business has gotten bigger, which I'm super grateful for. It's the best thing ever. And I'm just not in any way regretful. It's awesome. The best team doing awesome work. I'm super love it. But what's interesting is that the size hasn't increased my happiness. And so recently I was kind of like, what am I what am I doing? Am I even happy with this? And it's a really interesting question to ask. I've spent the last little while digging into that question. Why? Why am I doing this? So it wasn't, I realized it was not about the business. So the business in and of itself is brilliant and fundamentally, triple, quadruple, 10x the size of it. And I think it would be awesome, but it was actually more about me and not the fact that I am not the business. Because the business in and of itself, there's nothing to say that that can't become a billion-dollar thing, right? There's nothing to say that I should limit the potential of the business to create fantastic impact, both in the lives of our clients and the lives of our team, which is a big thing for us. We care about making an impact on the lives of our team, but that's the business, and I'm not the business. And so what's good for the business might not necessarily be what's good for me. And so then detaching those two things, like pulling my identity away from the business and realizing that's the thing that I've created and that's the thing that I can do, but that is not me. So what do I want? What is going to make me happy? What are the things that need to exist in my life for me to wake up every day feeling energized, inspired, satisfied, content, and not feeling like I'm in a state of lack or burnout or depression or unhappiness? And I started to unpack and kind of arrive at those things and what that looked like, rather than being someone whose identity is the business and identity is a worker who works 18 hours a day and does all of this kind of stuff. It's like, well, where do I add the most value? What if I just did that stuff? And what if I spent more time focusing on health and wellness and all these kind of things, which has kind of led to some kind of fundamental shifts in how I'm showing up in the world. And, it's a journey, not a destination for sure, but certainly, I can see that path going in the right direction.
Well, good on you, mate, for, it takes courage to even look at that, to look yourself in the mirror in that way. Many are too scared, and many are on this crazy growth journey anyway. They don't have time or the willingness, or they know if they do, it'll, slow them down. So it's each individual has a different story, man. That's what I've found. And, that's why giving advice is flawed. You just got to ask the right questions.
So what's the goal for you then? Okay, so what's the goal with you now, with your business, with the community?
Sit on the beach.
Sit on the beach. So talk to me about that. I mean, is the goal to continue to grow the podcast, just to continue to deliver value? How do you see things now and changing? What's next on your path?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I'm actually come back from this holiday and reassessing things. 14 years of podcasting, finding the wherewithal to, keep that machine going. There's a question around that for me. I know it's making a huge difference in a lot of people's lives in terms of the feedback I get. So that's really important to me, and I don't want to just take that away, but I want to keep enjoying it. I find that, someone like a Tim Ferriss, who started off on sort of one path with his podcast now is vastly different to what it was when he started. And now it's really just life according to Tim. And that's really nice. He can do that because it's called the Tim Ferriss Show. Mine's called Small Business, Big Marketing. So it's sort of hard to kind of pivot into an area that I do have a deep interest in, which is this notion of business owner well-being and mental health. So I am sort of tossing those around. I've threatened, I grew up in Melbourne and moved to the sunny coast, and I sometimes, I've been up here for 6 years, and sometimes I sort of ask myself, why did I come up here? And I think one of the reasons is potentially to run retreats. So I think more and more people are looking for experiences and people are looking for community. 2 deep insights to anyone looking to start a business. And so the idea of retreats is something that I'm tossing around, Goose. And there's a couple of other things. Funnily enough, a couple of interviews I've done in the last 2 months. One is with the drummer from Powderfinger, a great Aussie band. And the other one is with the manager of Fleetwood Mac, who managed Fleetwood Mac from 1981 to 1998. Very unusual guests for a Small Business, Big Marketing podcast, but I have a deep interest in music, and in doing those interviews, which I thoroughly enjoyed, kind of has lit a bit of a fire in me to maybe go down the path of creating something around music. I don't know what that is, but so yeah, I've got a pretty open mind at the moment, and I love that. I'm lucky enough to have been doing it for 14 years and built a good following, and that it creates opportunities. So who knows, mate? Watch this space.
Yeah, that's fantastic.